It arrived without a sound. No great fire burned through the atmosphere. No warning sirens blared across the globe. It simply appeared between one heartbeat and the next. A shadow where no shadow should be. An object so vast, it defied comprehension. It hung in high orbit, a silent, obsidian titan. From the ground, it was a sliver of perfect blackness. It blotted out the stars behind it. Telescopes and orbital stations gave a truer sense of its scale. The new shape in the sky was larger than any continent on Earth. A seamless vessel with no visible engines, no lights, no markings, no sign that anything lived within its impossible hull. Panic was the world's first language. Markets crashed, cities gridlocked. People looked to the sky and felt a primal fear, a feeling of being small and utterly insignificant. Then came the questions. Who were they? What did they want? Every nation with a transmitter beamed a message into the void. Welcome, warning, inquiry, mathematics, music. Nothing came back. The great ship was a wall of absolute silence. It did not move, it did not respond. It simply watched. Or perhaps it did not watch at all. Its presence was a question mark hanging over the entire human race. And for a long time, there would be no answer. The first day passed in a storm of frantic activity. The first week was a blur of emergency sessions and global summits. By the first month, a strange new normal began to settle in. The silent ship became a feature of the sky, a second moon made of night. People learned to live under its immense shadow. Humanity tried everything to get its attention. Probes were sent. Small, unmanned explorers designed to approach the alien vessel. They would get within a few thousand kilometers. Then their systems would simply die. No explosion, no defensive lasers. Just a quiet and complete shutdown. They floated dead in space, a small graveyard of failed questions. Military patrols kept a constant vigil from a safe distance. The greatest warships in human history looked like tiny toys. They circled the silent giant day after day. Their crews grew accustomed to the sight. The sheer emptiness of the alien presence was more unnerving than any threat. It was a constant, low-grade hum of dread in the back of every mind. Life went on, because it had to. People still went to work. Children still played in parks. You could even buy T-shirts with a ship on them. A bit of gallows humor in the face of the unknown. But the silence from above was changing everything. It was a weight on the soul of the world. A reminder that humanity was not alone and not in charge. For 6 months, the world held its breath. 6 months of perfect, unbroken silence from the star-born visitor. It became a part of the backdrop of life, a constant, silent fixture in the day and night sky. Humanity had shouted into the void. The void did not even bother to echo. The watch became a routine, a simple fact of existence. Then one Tuesday afternoon, it ended. There was no warning, no change in the ship's posture. One moment, the emissary was there. The next, it was gone. A flash of light, brighter than the sun, erupted from its position. It washed over the planet in a wave of silent, white energy. It was so bright that for a full minute, the day seemed to turn to noon everywhere at once. There was no sound, no shock wave, no destructive force, just the light. When vision returned to the world's telescopes and sensors, the sky was empty. The continent-sized vessel had vanished. It left behind nothing but the stars it had once obscured. The global watch was suddenly, abruptly over. The shadow was lifted. The relief was immediately followed by profound confusion. Did it leave? Did it self-destruct? Was the flash a departure signature or a final, silent attack? Orbital stations ran frantic scans of the area. They combed the patch of space where a giant had floated moments before. For hours they found nothing, just the cold vacuum and the faint traces of forgotten radiation. Then, a single tiny contact appeared on the scopes. It was small, impossibly small. It was floating in the exact center of the space the emissary had occupied. A single object, a relic, left behind by the silent giant. The world had expected an invasion or a greeting. It got a ghost and a souvenir. And that is where you came in. Your title was Senior Analyst of Xenotechnologies. It was a fancy way of saying you studied things that should not exist. And the object they brought to your secure lab was the most impossible thing you had ever seen. It was a perfect cube, about the size of a human heart. Its surface was a deep, non-reflective black. It seemed to drink the light that touched it. It rested on a containment field in the center of your lab. It did not radiate heat. It had no detectable mass. Yet, it was visibly there, a piece of physical nothingness. You were tasked with understanding it. The fate of the world, they said, might depend on it. No pressure, of course. Your team had tried everything. You bombarded it with radiation. The cube simply absorbed it. You fired high-energy lasers at its corners. The beams vanished without a trace. Not even a whisper of heat bloomed on the surface. You tried to scan it with every imaging technology known to man. X-rays, magnetic resonance, neutrino tomography. Every scan returned a flat wall of nothing. The cube was a perfect black box. It defied physics. It mocked your science. For weeks, you and your team worked around the clock. You cataloged every failure, every null result. The pressure from your superiors was immense. The world knew the cube existed. They called it the emissary's orphan. They waited for you to give them answers. And you had none. You felt like a prehistoric man trying to understand a smartphone. You were poking it with a stick. Only your sticks were particle accelerators and atomic drills. The result was the same. Nothing. The cube remained silent. It was as aloof and unreadable as the great ship that had left it behind. It was a perfect, maddening puzzle. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday, the 87th day of the project. It came not from a machine, but from a moment of human weakness. You were alone in the lab. The midnight shift was hours away. The rest of your team was gone, chasing sleep they would not find. The silence of the room was thick. The cube floated in its field, indifferent. You were exhausted, frustrated, beaten. You slumped into your chair and let out a long sigh. To distract yourself from the failure, you pulled out your personal audio player. An old habit from long nights of study, you put on a piece of music, an old folk song from your childhood. A simple melody, a human voice singing of loss and hope. The song filled the quiet lab. It was soft. It was simple. And it was the key. The cube responded. A low hum, almost too quiet to hear, vibrated in the air. A faint internal light pulsed within its black depths. It was a soft blue glow, a ghost of light in the absolute darkness. You froze. Your heart hammered against your ribs. You shut off the music. The hum and the light vanished. The cube was inert again. You fumbled with the player, your hands shaking. You played the song again. The blue light returned. The low hum resonated in your bones. It was not a reaction to sound waves. You had blasted the cube with every frequency imaginable. It was a reaction to the music itself. You called your team. You woke them all up. They stumbled into the lab, bleary-eyed and confused. You showed them what you had found. The disbelief on their faces melted into pure astonishment. For months, they had used the brute force of science. The answer was art. The answer was a song. A new frenzy of research began, this time with composers and musicologists. The days that followed were a strange mix of science and art. Your team tested thousands of recordings. Most did nothing. Random noise and chaotic sounds were ignored. But structured melodies, symphonies, folk songs, even simple lullabies, elicited a response. The cube seemed to listen. It seemed to judge. It pulsed with different colors. Blue for curiosity, green for harmony, red for discord. A fierce but friendly debate started among the staff. Was classical music a better representation of humanity than rock and roll? Should they play at something with complex math in its structure or raw emotion? It was the most absurd and most important debate in human history. You were no longer just scientists. You were DJs for first contact. After weeks of trial and error, you found a pattern. The cube was not just listening, it was asking for a sequence, a specific combination of tones and rhythms. It was a lock, and the key was a melody. You and the musicologists worked day and night. You pieced together the sequence from the cube's responses. It was a song you were learning note by note from an alien teacher. Finally, the day came. You stood before the cube with your team. The air in the lab crackled with anticipation. The final melody was ready. It was a sequence of 17 notes, a haunting, beautiful tune that felt both alien and strangely familiar. You broadcast the completed song. The notes filled the room. The cube's response was immediate and overwhelming. It pulsed with a brilliant white light. The low hum grew into a powerful, resonant chord. It rose from its containment field. It floated to the exact center of the room. Then, it unfolded. Not like a machine with hinges and gears. It bloomed. The black surfaces dissolved into light and information. A vast, three-dimensional image filled the laboratory. It was a star chart. But it was unlike any star chart humanity had ever created. It was a living, breathing map of the entire galaxy. Billions of points of light, stars, glittered in the air around you. You and your team stood in the middle of a river of suns. It was the most beautiful thing you had ever seen. You could see the familiar spiral arms of the Milky Way. You could even pinpoint your own sun, a tiny, insignificant speck in the cosmic ocean. But there was more. Glowing lines of light connected thousands of systems. They were pathways, star lanes, a network of roads between worlds. It was a map of a galactic civilization. Then your awe turned to ice. You saw something else on the map. It started at the edge of the galaxy, a creeping stain, a patch of darkness that was spreading. As you watched, systems connected by the glowing pathways would flicker. Then they would go dark. The point of light representing their star would simply vanish from the map. The darkness was moving along the pathways. It was like a plague spreading through a body. It was consuming everything it touched. You zoomed in on a system just as it went dark. The name of the civilization appeared in alien script, followed by a translation. The Elder Ones. A ripple of silent data washed over you. A feeling of immense loss, of a billion voices silenced at once. You realized the truth with a certainty that chilled you to your core. The great ship, the Emissary, had not been a visitor. It had not been an explorer. It was a messenger, and it was already dead before it arrived. It was a final, desperate warning, a tombstone thrown across the stars. This was not a map of opportunity. It was a map of a graveyard, and the graves were spreading.